right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Knowledge Podcast with myself, Alex Connor, and we're in the series, the solo series, if you will, and today this is a adjunct or a next episode, if you will, a part two to what we talked about last time on the podcast. So last episode, we talked about behavior and lifestyle. So this series is all about unpacking the hierarchy of, first of all, the nutrition, and then we're going to move on to training. So how do you prioritize your time, your energy, and your focus when it comes to nutrition and then training, i.e. where do you start and what's the next step? So as I said last time, this is all about giving you maximum amounts of value. So I just want to simplify these topics, these concepts. I want to define them, and then I want you to be able to go away and actually put these things into action. So you've got real world applications that you can take away, derive, and do literally right now. So hope you're enjoying these. As ever, if you do, share them around and give me some feedback if you want to hear specific topics or if you've got any questions too. So let's dive in. Now, the second thing we're going to look at on the hierarchy of nutrition is energy balance. So I've got some notes here. So for those of you watching, if you see me glancing down, here it is. I've got a bit of an itch on the old nose. I just want to make sure I cover off on the main key things. That's all. So that is the infamous question. How many calories should you be consuming? Should I be consuming? Jacob behind the camera consuming? Jamie hiding in the corner consuming? Whatever you want. Well, it depends, right? It's not really the answer that you wanted. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of factors. There's not one magic formula. There's not one magic set of macros that you can be on for your entire life, or just for bulking, or just for cutting, or just for gaining. So what we want to do is identify, how do we find out, or how do we find a starting point calorie-wise? So if you don't know right now, or even if you do know, you might want to just have a think about some of these concepts, or even make some adjustments based on your goal, especially if you're not seeing the results that you want. So the first thing we need to do is we need to start with something. And I think this is where, again, things get really overcomplicated, because there are so many formulas that are viable, and there are so many concepts and recommendations around what you should start with, and sometimes you don't know where to start. So the first takeaway that I really want you to acknowledge is just get started. Because we can procrastinate all we like, but the sooner we get started, the sooner we can see what that amount of food has, that effect on our body, so we can see whether, depending on our goal, are we maintaining the weight with those calories? Are we gaining weight with those calories? Or are we losing weight with those calories? Okay? I'm going to kind of cross over into macronutrients on here as well, although we're going to do, another episode on macros, micros in a little bit more detail, and then food selection, because again, we're going up the hierarchy. So this is purely energy balance, but I will sort of add some extras on for macros to give you a bit more of an idea of how to fill the calories. So as a basic starting point, if you like, so you probably want some calculations. Honestly, most body weight calculators are going to be okay, but again, disclaimer, none of them are perfect. The reason why is we've got to factor in things like our basal metabolic rate, which is, if I was to sit here all day, just like this, and do completely nothing, my body would still require calories, because my heart is pumping, I'm breathing. It needs to maintain the organs and the functionality of the body. Then I've got things like my EAT, so my exercise activity thermogenesis. These are in no particular order, by the way. So these are all just fancy acronyms for things, or energy systems, or not energy systems, but things that affect the energy output of the body. So that's specific exercise that gets my heart rate above a certain level, usually above 50 to 60%, and I'm actually burning calories, whether that's cardio, sporting exercises, weight training, and the like. I've then got NEAT, which you may have heard of. It seems to be quite popular, especially at the moment, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Okay, so that is anything I'm doing that's not particularly exercise. So me now waving my hands, fidgeting, scratching my head, if I'm in the car singing, if I'm going for a walk, whatever it is, those things all equate. Now we've got TEF as well, which is the thermic effect of food. So when we eat food, our body actually uses calories to break down and digest the food. Now, again, they don't sort of cancel each other out. We can usually consume more than we can burn in that process. But again, all these factors together are going to contribute to our energy demands. So these calculations usually factor these things in. So you don't necessarily need to go and work out all of these metrics, although you can, especially for higher sporting performances. But Again, we're keeping it simple. We need a starting point. But I just want you to understand the acknowledgements and the things that contribute to energy input and output and understand what the factors are. So, some calculation that you can do right now is you can convert your body weight into pounds. Okay, it's easy to do on Google or on your phone. You can just Google something in and type it in. Now, for men, you want to times that body weight in pounds by 13 or 16. Now, obviously, the lower number is more if you're inactive, so sedentary. So we've got these lifestyle factors, which means sedentary, you're very inactive, you might have a desk job, you don't move much. We've got lightly active, that might be someone who's at a desk, but they're getting up because they've got intermissions or intervals of being on their feet. We've then got highly or moderately active, moderately to highly active, so people who might then be standing on their feet in a retail job. And then we've got like really highly active or extreme, which is things like your tradesmen, people that are constantly moving, doing something that is semi-physical, and they're not really sat down for long durations. So that's going to have a big impact. So again, if you're more active, you want to go with the higher number, and if you're less active, you want to go with the lower number. Now for females, similar but slightly less, usually being smaller bodies, so requiring less energy, not always the case, but a majority, you want to times your body weight in pounds by 11 to 14. Now again, this is going to depend on your energy output. So again, if you're someone who doesn't move much and you're less active, go the lower number. If you're more active, go the higher number. If you're somewhere in between, start with the middle number. Now once again, this is just a recommendation. So it's not set in stone, but if you've not tracked your macros before, again, just get started with something. If it feels like it's too much food, don't force it. If it feels like it's not enough, eat a little bit more initially, because this is all about, again, learning, getting started, and actually starting to create an awareness, which is what I want to talk about next. So when I'm working with a client, depending on where they're at, most people don't really have a high level of nutrition literacy, meaning that they're not at a level where they can interpret and understand nutrition at a very competent level. Hence why they're coming to me for that assistance. So what I want people to start doing is just creating an awareness. There's no point in just giving someone a meal plan and saying, here, stick this. Stick this. That sounds well, don't keep it PG. Stick with this, because they might not even understand how to track their nutrition. They might not even understand what calories are, what protein is, how often they should eat. So we want to start with some basic recommendations and considerations first. So with this in mind, we want to start creating a bit of a food diary. Now, if you've never tracked your food before, this can be a little bit daunting. And a lot of people really have a big fear of the unknown. And especially when it comes to tracking food, there's a little bit of a stigma around, I don't want to track my food, because it does take effort, and perhaps also we can hide in the unknown that we're eating foods that perhaps are not conducive to our goal, and by actually bringing them into light, then we're actually faced with what we need to change. However, if you are ready to make that change, the best way to start is just tracking your food, creating a food diary. Don't be judgmental about it. Don't stress about it. Just purely track and observe. And from there, we can make incremental changes. And the reason I would do this with a client is because I want to understand what the client eats, what they like, what they dislike, what their habits are, when they generally overeat, if they undereat, what foods they like, how many meals they're eating, all of the habits and behaviors surrounding food. And again, there's no judgments. It's about meeting someone where they're at. So if you start to track your food, the funny fact is you'll actually start to eat better straight away, because usually when you become aware and you focus on something, so where attention goes, or where attention goes, energy flows, whatever that is. Hopefully I've not done that backwards, but you get what I'm saying. You focus on something, you become aware of it. You buy a certain car, you see that car now because you have the car, and all of a sudden it's like, how many of these cars are around? They were always around, but now you're aware of it. So when you focus on something like your food, you already start to make better choices, especially when you're trying to create positive change with your health and in your body. So from there, you will create this food diary. Now, you can use multiple tools. So one of them is old school. You can just write your food down. You can take pictures of the food as well if you forget, and you can look back on them and create a bit of a video log. What I would recommend really is using either MacroFactor or MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is probably number one, purely based on the fact that it's free. MacroFactor is paid, but it is a lot more advanced or more specific to those who are interested in physique change, maybe like yourselves listening to this. But either way, the tool is designed for you to track your food so you can actually gauge a metric. Remember, if we're not assessing, we're guessing. So if we start tracking our intake and we start putting the foods in to the best of our ability, we start to see, okay, I've calculated that I need to eat, or supposedly need to eat, this amount of food per day. Oh, actually, I'm really under that goal, or I'm really over that goal, etc. So it starts to give us a bit of an indication of where we are. I use the analogy of like throwing a dart onto a dartboard. So we want to kind of figure out, if the goal is the bullseye, and again, it's about progress, not perfection, and we want to get close to it, by throwing the dart and tracking our food, we kind of see how close we are to that calorie goal. Now, we don't know that if we never get started, right? So the best thing, again, is just to start with something. Start tracking your food. Again, a lot of people will say, but Alex, I don't know how to do it, or it's too hard. Well, look, nothing is easy the first time you do it. Riding a bike wasn't easy, right? Learning to speak English and spelling and maths, none of it was easy, but now we all do it at a basic level very easy. And it's the same with nutritional literacy, hence the term nutritional literacy. We don't need to be novelists, but we do need to understand the basic understanding of food. Again, being able to read, write, and just do these basic things. And once we do them, they just become autonomous anyway. And it's not about tracking forever. If you want to understand tracking, you do it for a period of time. It's like riding a bike, and you just don't forget. As long as you keep that skill there, and even if you don't do it regularly, you just don't forget these things. So we're trying to get back to this process of where we understand how to do it. But if we remove the guesswork and we're interested in specific fat loss, specific muscle gain, and we want to see tangible results, we will do these things and we will make these efforts. So the hardest thing is just getting started. Tracking your food on MyFitnessPal, seeing whereabouts those calories are. Now, once you get consistent in that and those calories, you want to see what the weight trend is. So if your goal was to lose body fat, which usually it is for most people, and gain muscle or retain muscle mass, you want to make sure that you're in what we call a calorie deficit. Now, you might have heard about this word. It's bantered about a lot, but truly it is the defining factor for weight loss. And there's a lot of people who try and focus on other things or say it's this and that, and it's just a whole load of rubbish, because ultimately there are factors that will contribute and hinder people, especially medical factors, but most of us, it's going to be getting into a true calorie deficit. And a lot of the reason why we're not in one is because we're not tracking our food, we're not tracking our food properly, and perhaps we're just lacking a bit of consistency and discipline to be able to do it. And maybe we need to exercise regularly to offset that energy balance as well. So once we start tracking our food, we're going to be able to remove that guesswork and manipulate it. Now, if we're looking to see a calorie deficit and we're tracking our weight, so if we get our body weight and we track on the same scales under the same environment, you can do this daily or weekly. And again, I don't want you to get fixated with the scale weight, because these are things that can really start to hinder you mentally. But remember, weight fluctuates with so many factors: food, going to the toilet, menstrual cycles, stress, time of day, sleep, you name it. So remember, it's a number, and we're gauging the number because over time, not necessarily straight away, we want to see that number either go down, go up, or stay the same. Now, there's lots of things I could contribute to this, like, for example, if you started weight training or if you started taking creatine, how your body weight could go up and you could lose body fat. And this is why it's good to take pictures and girth measurements as well, which I do for my clients, because some people don't have a lot of body fat, but they're what we call skinny fat, where they're pretty flat, they don't have a lot of lean tissue, but they still have enough body fat to appear with their shirt off, sort of flabby and flat. And oftentimes these people can lose a little bit of weight, maintain the weight, and then look completely different over a 3 to 6 month period. But if you're someone who carries a little bit more body fat, you're probably going to see a bigger tangible change in a calorie deficit because you've got a lot of excess body fat to lose. Now, if we're looking to lose body fat, and again, we're tracking our calories, and say you calculated your calories to be 2,000, right? 500 calories, again, these are recommendations, somewhere thereabouts. So if you calculated your calories to be 2,000 and it was like, say, maintenance, 500 calories below, you're going to find, or thereabouts, a deficit, meaning the calories that are going to help you lose weight. And then 500 calories above, you're generally, or thereabouts, going to find the calories that will help you gain weight. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll just go from one extreme to the other and just take the calories away. But remember, we don't know if these calories are perfect. Perfect being the wrong word, accurate for us right now. So again, we've got to track. So if say you got 2,000 calories, and then what happened is you just seen your weight fluctuate, but it kind of stayed the same over a two to 4 week period, we're probably going to say, unless your energy demands have changed, i.e. you've got another job, you're training, or something in your lifestyle has changed dramatically, that you found your maintenance calories. Now, if you found that your body weight was steadily dropping, you have found your deficit or a reasonable deficit calories. And the same goes if you were starting to gain weight slowly. Now, your body will adapt over time, and this is where the calories won't always fit the bill. So there's different levels of deficit. We've got deficits which are more extreme and moderate and light, and the same with a surplus. Now, I wouldn't recommend going extreme in any direction. I would recommend making small adjustments in increments. So if 2,000 calories maintained your body weight and you wanted to lose weight, perhaps then go to 1,800 calories first. And we'll talk about the macronutrient split in more depth in the next episode of how to fill now the energy balance. But this is just purely about the total calories and energy balance equation. And then we're going to move to macros after that, because if you're still consuming too many calories, you're not going to lose weight if you are in a surplus. So again, we've got to get ourselves in a calorie deficit, which is where our body is expending more calories than it's intaking. Okay, and again, this doesn't mean just dropping all the food and cutting all the calories. It means doing it in a very sustainable and a pragmatic way. Hence why I said I don't want you to go super extreme. A lot of people do that. It's not sustainable. They feel flat. They feel like they've got low energy. And again, this can have cause all sorts of issues as well in the body, and this is not good for health. Okay, so again, small incremental progressions, but this is all about starting with a starting point, tracking, assessing your body weight over time. And again, progress pictures and girth measurements would be ideal too, but again, it's not necessary, but would be ideal. Small amount of effort, big amount of return, and then making the appropriate adjustments. Now, if we're doing that, we're going to be losing body fat over time. Now, if we're also weight training and we're starting to do perhaps some steps, we can also increase the energy deficit without necessarily reducing food. So again, if you were someone that wanted to eat a little bit more food, but you also wanted to enhance your deficit, or even if you just wanted to speed up the deficit a little bit again at a sustainable pace, you could aim to get more steps in a day. So that's what we refer to as NEAT, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And the good thing about steps is they don't require a lot of effort, but they really help us offset our energy balance. They're also good for the mind, they're good for the spinal health as well, and at the end of the day, they're good for overall well-being. And I encourage people to do that outside the gym where possible. Get outside if you can. If you have to do them in the gym, do it. And if you're trying to find steps, again, this might be, getting up a little bit earlier, walking the dog, walking with a friend, doing some cardio before and after your training at the gym, things like that. All the steps add up. Again, it takes effort, but this is what is required to get towards the goal. But you can make it achievable by just sometimes thinking outside the box and making these little small adjustments throughout the day. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big, massive, I need to go for an hour walk, because that might not be viable for you depending on, again, your daily requirements, activities. You might have a family, and we talked about that last time. So you can see how all of this starts to build on now with how it affects everything, because your circumstances are going to depict your ability to do this. Now, in the next episode, we're going to go through the macronutrients of how to fill this. But what I wanted to do is just at least give you some basic recommendations to fill these calories right now, without going too specific, because I want to keep these episodes a little shorter and digestible. And I'm also going to do a recap at the end for those who maybe have been a little bit confused. I do talk a little bit fast, and maybe you got stuck in the weeds. I just want to give you the takeaways. But before we do that, some recommendations to fill your calories during the day. So if I had to give an elevator pitch to someone, I stepped in the elevator and they're like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, help people look and feel better naked. And they're like, oh, are you a surgeon? I'm like, no, I'm a trainer. And they're like, cool. What should I do with nutrition? Which is a question I get a lot. Some basic recommendations I would give them is say, hey, look, 80% of your food, keep from whole food, or try and intake from whole food. So foods that your grandma would recognize. 20% have a little bit of fun with. It's called balance. It's called living. Start creating awareness by tracking their food so they can manage the calories. Usually people will start to self-correct and cut out the junk food and extra calories from, say, fizzy energy drinks, and also beers and alcohol on the weekend. And then try and get at least 3 meals a day. They don't necessarily have to be really early, medium, and late, but 3 good boluses of protein, fat, and carbs per day. So 3 main meals are generally good for health, easy to space out, and not too often as well. 3 to 5 servings of fruit and vegetables. And again, that's 3 to 5. So it might not be 5. It might be 3 fruits and or vegetables. So it might be some blueberries in the morning. You had some broccoli at lunch, and then in the evening you had a salad. Bang. Easy, right? So you're just ticking off these basics to get your micronutrients in, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, which we'll talk about later on. And then 3 liters of water too. So most people aren't drinking a lot of water, so making sure that they're getting enough quality water in as well, hydration levels. And just by doing that, someone will already generally improve their health, or there's things within those that they're not ticking the box of. So again, starting with the basics. So make sure that you're doing that if you're not already with your calories, to make sure, or to ensure that you're at least filling them properly, okay? And serving size wise, what I might do is in the show notes, I'll put a link to a resource which will give you some notes on this on my YouTube channel, so you can read back through. But protein wise, if you were going to get 3 to 5 servings a day of protein, you'd want to go for a palmful of protein, a fistful of starchy carbohydrates. You might go then from a fistful of vegetables, and then a thumbful of fats, like as a visual metric, especially if you weren't tracking or if you didn't know how many grams to eat just yet, because again, we're going to cover this in the next episode. Cool. Clean versus dirty I've got here, because again, the 80-20 rule. So, if you're not in a calorie deficit, it doesn't matter how much healthy food you're eating, you're still going to put on weight. So there's this misdemeanor where if you eat clean, you lose weight. Not the case. Definitely promoting healthier food, but it doesn't automatically mean you're going to lose weight. Again, it's a mathematical energy balance equation. We've gone through this today. So you need to be in a calorie deficit. If you're not losing weight sustainably, it means you're not in a calorie deficit. End of story. So we know now how to induce that. Track the food, reduce the intake of the food, and increase your energy expenditure through NEAT or exercise. Now, to recap, because I'm going to leave it there, I don't want to go into more depth with macronutrients yet. So macro meaning large, protein, fat, carbs, fiber, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. I want to just recap for you as well. So we talked about today energy balance. So this is how much energy should we intake a day to fuel our bodies for health, overall health, general well-being and movement and performance, right? So training. And again, we've kind of kept it really simple. And we've talked about the factors that are correlated to that we need. And I've given you some recommendations to calculate some starting calories if you don't already have some. So again, I'll put these in the show notes as well below, so you can actually read through them. So again, start with something. Don't worry about, getting the perfect number. Again, if it feels too high or too low, just start tracking your food. Start with something. Don't starve yourself. Don't overeat. Start with something viable and make adjustments from there. I want you to track your body weight where you can as consistently as possible with the calories, so that you can see the body weight trends. So using generally MyFitnessPal or Macro Factor is the best. MyFitnessPal's free. It's easy. I've got videos on how to use this as well. Start creating an awareness of what you're putting in your body and make adjustments to get closer to the calorie goal. From there, once you see the weight trends, you can adjust accordingly depending on your goal, whether that's to lose weight, maintain weight, or build muscle, okay? And aside from that, how to perhaps fill these calories. So again, 80% whole food, healthy foods, foods that your grandma would recognize, 20% have a bit of fun with, at least 3 meals a day, 3 to 5 servings of fruit and veg. Again, if you're a smaller individual, 3. If you're a bigger individual, 5, because you'll need more. Try and aim for 3 liters of water a day plus. And again, keeping in mind that you can eat whatever you want, although I would obviously recommend most of the food coming from healthy foods, but the fact that eating clean, quote unquote, will not automatically put you in a calorie deficit, because again, this has got to be sustainable, it's got to be flexible, it's got to be enjoyable, okay? Now, if you've got any questions about this, please leave a comment, send me a DM. If you found this helpful, send it on to a friend, associate, colleague, someone who has been struggling with calories or losing weight. This can help them actually understand the process. Give it a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you in the next episode where we're going to be covering macronutrients, so protein, fat, carbs, and fiber, and how to identify how much to eat in correlation with the calories that we've just learned how to calculate. And we're going to do that to fuel, obviously, performance for training and also general health. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, you know it. Stay fearless.